Hello, welcome back to Math Time with Professor Prime, and I am your host as always, Professor Prime. And welcome to Super Ultra Mega Math History. Mega Math Moments. And this series is a series where I look at different moments and different events throughout math history that I find fascinating, that I find utterly intriguing, that I also find significant to math history. And I do have another series where I get more into people, and that's Super Ultra Mega Math History Phenomenal Figures. Um, so there's that, and that's ongoing. So in this one, though, we'll be focusing on moments and people happen to be involved here and there, you know? Well, I mean, they have to be involved for it to progress. But that being said, let's get into it. I don't know why I sang it. We're gonna roll with it. So today's topic is math duels. So we're gonna roll back the clock a little bit, take a journey into the past, and go to the 16th century, 1500s, time of the Renaissance, over in Italy. So at this time, mathematicians, they were doing a lot of cool stuff. They had a lot going on, a lot of development, and they also had math duels. And here's the idea behind the math duels. They were public duels where a challenger would issue a certain amount of problems to an opponent for them to solve. And on the flip side, the opponent would do the same to them. And then the idea would be the winner would be the one who solved the most problems. If there was a tie, there was some going back and forth until someone was the victor. Now, if you're trying to take down your opponent with this, one of the things that comes with it is sometimes information would get withheld, which is unfortunate. And that's an uglier side of a pretty cool idea. But on the flip side, you're challenging people to solve math, and it got intense. It got crazy. People just going back and forth and, getting very intense with each other, getting very personal with each other. Weirdly enough, having some sort of like mathematical espionage going on. Like, it got wild. And I think that's pretty interesting. And I just like the concept in general. Like, you get to go back and forth with like people. And the idea is like if you won, right? There was a bunch of different like rewards that could come with this. Right? You could get a cash payout. You could get more clout. It could be a number of things. And with that clout, you can get more job security, get a like pretty good job, like teaching or something along the likes. And I think that's interesting too. But on the flip side, if you lost, there was a very realistic possibility that your career would be in shambles. You'd be publicly shamed, outright embarrassed. It's a risk that you took with this. High risk, high rewards, but also high consequences. And so to me, that gets interesting. Now, I like the idea, like I said, on its own. And I think it's cool, otherwise, I wouldn't be doing it. But there is a more significant side to math history than just this cool thing where it's just like, hey, people back in the 1500s in Italy were just having math duels in the street and whatnot. There's more to it than that. Because, like I said, sometimes information will get withheld, or you get some cool discovery. And one of the biggest things to come out of it is having solutions to a cubic equation, or better to say, we figured out we could find solutions to cubic equations. Something that people at the time thought was impossible. And people thought it was impossible because it involved having the roots of negative numbers involved. That was a problem. We didn't always have a way to deal with imaginary numbers or complex numbers which have real and imaginary parts. And for the record, I hate the term imaginary number. It's a loaded term. But the whole thing is that was one of the biggest things to come out of this. And what gets fascinating is there's several people involved But the math duels is what brought that to the surface. A lot of back and forth with that, and that actually led to some pretty bad blood between a couple mathematicians uh, concerning getting the results out there. And I probably talked about some of them in another video, but one of them was Tartaglia, and he did a lot of work with it. Some people refined it a little later on, and some people had less refined versions of it before him. I'm not sure if he was aware of that, but the whole thing is like he did this, and he gets some credit now, but not so much back then. He was like publicly shamed um, about losing a math duel later on pertaining to this. But the whole thing is just that I find it fascinating. You had these math duels, and then some game changing stuff happened as a result. And with the cubic equations, I find it fascinating because like we didn't really have a way to talk about it, but that's how math history goes. We're just trying to make sense of the universe. We're trying to figure things out, and we're trying to find ways to talk about them. And we don't always have those tools, but we can develop them. Or like I mean, as time progresses, right? Like because everything that the numbers represent, right, already existed, but we didn't have those. We didn't have a way to talk about that at first, and we have them, right? We didn't have algebra at first. We didn't have zero. We didn't have negative numbers. We didn't have imaginary numbers, complex numbers, higher dimensions, all that stuff. But over time, that was developed. And I think kind of a big takeaway from this is that I find it fascinating that all this competition, arguably unhealthy competition, like with the math duels, led to some pretty cool stuff. With the biggest one or the biggest result being solutions to cubic equations existing. So yeah, that being said, I hope you enjoyed this. I hope you learned something from it, and I really do think math duels are a good idea, or were cool and like in a different setting or a good idea. I liked them so much that at the time when I learned about them, like back when I was in college, I actually, tried to bring them back. Like I was challenging people to math duels. That was the thing. I was that dude. Like, but no one accepted my challenge because I knew some pretty obscure math stuff. And the whole thing is like, if they couldn't solve the problems and I solved more of their problems, then I would win. So I took that as a big sign of respect. So I appreciate it. And then like some of the people who probably knew just as much as me about like math in general and some of the weirder side of it, they didn't really want to like get into that either. But that's fair. I just had fun, just like saying, "Oh, I challenge you to a math duel." That being said, they do still kind of go on in their own way, but like in a much more controlled way with like different math competitions. And oof, that is a different video in itself, and I might do something with that in the future because I think it's pretty cool. And I actually did a lot in one of my positions with developing content for competitive math and like getting the students prepped for that. But yeah, so I'm gonna bring this video to a close, and I want you to know, math duels, they happen. That was a thing. Like, I'll see you on the next video, and I'll leave some links below in the description with more information because I think it's absolutely fascinating, and you'd be surprised what you might find. That being said, Professor Prime out.